wanted to thank the Mass Cultural Council and the Friends of the Chelsea Public Library for their support for this project. The library, the Friends of the Library, partnered with Darlene and Sarah to support this project because we believe it aligns with our mission to bring art and culture to our residents and preserve, curate, and archive the images and oral histories of our community. Please visit the library often. The exhibit is, as you may have seen, in the front adult fiction room, and it'll change as we get more photos. We'll also have an active website which will archive oral histories as well. That is ongoing. So I just wanted to introduce Darlene DeVita. She is a Boston-based freelance professional photographer who's worked extensively for corporate and nonprofit clients. More importantly, for us here, as we celebrate this exhibit, she is an 18-year resident, not year old, resident. Who fell in love with the city the moment that she moved here. She began the People of Chelsea project in 2016, going out on the streets of Chelsea with a camera and a pop-up backdrop to photograph her friends and neighbors. The project went on brief hiatus in the early days of the pandemic shutdown, but Dar quickly saw how this feisty little city pulled together in crisis, and she fired up her cameras again to document that effort and continue this project. She then realized that images alone were not enough, because Chelsea is, and always was, and has been, an immigrant community filled with stories that make up its layered history. The voices of the people she was photographing also need to be heard. So her fellow citizens were interviewed as well as photographed, and the project became one of words and pictures. Dar has received 3 grants from the Chelsea Cultural Council and Heritage Grants for this project. The latest was a collaboration with the Friends of the Chelsea Public Library to archive the photographic prints and audio. And a book will be in the works once the benefactor steps forward. I also wanted to introduce Sarah Putnam. 3 years ago, Dar brought friend and colleague Sarah Putnam in as a collaborator on the People of Chelsea project, primarily to help in Spanish-speaking situations with interviews and providing another set of eyes. And Sarah has been in her own right a freelance photographer and writer for national publications and organizations for decades. Sarah will moderate tonight's panel discussion.
Welcome. I get to introduce this awesome panel. So starting here, Juliana Cardona was born in Colombia, grew up in East Boston. She and her husband moved to Chelsea in 2008, where they're raising their 8 children. And as a mother of 8, Juliana is probably one of the foremost experts on resources for families and children in Chelsea. Her children all go to public schools here and have participated in many local extracurricular activities and events. Daniela Perez Lopez was born and raised in Chelsea. Her parents both immigrated from Guatemala, and she's been responsible for her 3 younger siblings while her parents worked multiple jobs. She's a junior at Chelsea High School, where she takes honors classes, and in the summer, she's worked at La Colaborativa. Roy Avellaneda was born in Chelsea to parents who immigrated from Argentina. His father, Tito, owned Tito's Bakery for 45 years, which is where Roy learned to bake and probably learned a few other things too. He was a city councilor for 25 years, most recently the president of the council. And as a local businessman, Roy is the owner of Pani Cafe coffee shop, as well as a realtor. Sergeant Star Chung was born in Vietnam and moved from Pennsylvania to Chelsea with her mother and younger siblings when she was 8 after her parents divorced. So growing up here, she was involved in sports and a fair amount of trouble, she says. Slowly. She came out when she was 13, married her wife Jackie in 2018, and their daughter Star was born in 2020. She joined the Chelsea Police Force in 2011 and was promoted to sergeant in 2021. So I'm going to start with Darlene. We each have about 5 minutes. So Dar, can you tell us what got you started on this project? What kept you going? And what surprises you found along the way?
So I started the project in 2016. We had the Chelsea Art Walk at the time. John Kennard, one of the founders, was back there. I decided, I had this backdrop which belonged to my late sister, which is in my statement you can read about, but it's like I want to go out and just photograph people in Chelsea. And like, you know, it's the introduction. I fell in love with the city the moment I came here in 2004. I just started driving around and I just felt very connected. And but I thought, oh, I'll just go out and do some portraits. And I started photographing, and I went out for a couple of days, and then I went to City Hall and I set up out there. And then I realized I'm just taking portraits. There's stories to be heard in the city. And so I started interviewing, and then of course I realized I don't speak Spanish. Very, very little Spanish. I do. So Sarah and I are very good friends, great photographer, writer. And I don't know if I just asked you to come along with me one day, and it just was, oh my God, this is great. And we just had so much fun, and we'd see people, or they'd see us, and we'd just grab them and say, you know, can we take your picture? Can we get your story? So we started asking little questions, and it just kept evolving from there. And, but really what it allowed for me was just, I mean, this city, you know, like I said, I've always had great respect for it. You know, especially what we've been through the last few years, when I knew how resilient and amazing this community was. But I had hard times. There were times where I'm like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. But when Sarah came along and we really became colleagues, and I said this at one point, I don't think I would continue to do this if it wasn't for you. It's a lot of work, but it's a labor of love. And I joke, if I could just do this for my living, I would just, because every time I'm out there, I meet somebody new, and I'm like, I want to photograph everybody, even putting this together. I'm like, I want everybody to have their picture, but I can't. There's going to be pictures that, people that I photographed John, he's not in this particular show, but, so in any case, just as time went on, the stories just kept coming and coming, and then they got more in depth and in the history of Chelsea and the people that make up this city and the diversity of this city. This is all the things that I love about Chelsea. And like I said, every time we're out there, there's just more and more stories. And during the pandemic, I went out and I just had to go out and document. And I worked a lot with the Collaborativa, and it really kind of kept me sane, to do something meaningful with my work. And it was the first time that I've ever been able to do something that I think really can bring joy and hope. And I enjoy it so much. And if other people enjoy it, and I'm finding that they do, and people enjoy telling me their stories, I'm so appreciative that people give me their time. And they're like, oh, this is great. You're letting me tell my story. I've only had one person that didn't like her photograph, and that's your funny story. But that's not what it's about. So in any case, I don't know if that. But that's it. But the project will keep going, because the more I'm involved with this city, and especially I bring up COVID. This project is not about COVID, but during that pandemic, and the way that this city came together, the whole community, everybody, oh my God. And we were the hardest hit, as we all know, here in this room, at the beginning of the pandemic, and the way that we were able to come through it with this community is just mind-blowing. But at the same time, no, it's not. Chelsea's been through so much, fires and receivership and a bad reputation. I remember I had people when I first moved here that were photographers, and I said, yeah, I got this loft, I'm going to have my studio here. And they said, but what about, are you going to use Chelsea as your address? And I'm like, oh, of course. And they're like, do you think people want to go to Chelsea? And I said, well, if they don't want to go to Chelsea, then I don't need to work with them. Really. So there was one other thing, because I'm not good at, I just kind of go as I go, which I'm doing right now. But maybe I'll just pull it out later. Yeah, that's it.
So Juliana, Can you talk about what it's like to raise children in this city? And what resources have you found that benefit your children? And what have been the challenges of raising a family in Chelsea?
Some of the resources that have been very useful for my family, for example, the Camino program that the Chelsea Public Schools offer, the Kelly School in particular, where children do a duolingual program when they're learning both Spanish and English at the same time. They're learning how to speak it and write it. And I think that as someone, I'm actually a certified medical interpreter, so that's actually my career. So as someone who grew up in an immigrant household, that's actually been very valuable. So I see the value of being bilingual. And also, I see a lot of support as, for example, like the Boys and Girls Club is a place where my children have participated, all the way from the eldest, who's 20, to the youngest, right? Well, one, they have an age limit, but my youngest that is there right now, he's 7. They've all learned how to swim there. They also go there after school. And I think it's very important for working parents to have these resources. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to work if it weren't for these resources that are available in the community. And some of the challenges, I think that some of the things that sadden me sometimes is, for example, when I go to the playgrounds and I meet other parents and I talk to them, and they're not aware of the resources in their own community. Like, they have no idea what's happening. Although they live here, it's almost like, and I kind of understand because I grew up with parents who were immigrants, who had very low wages, who had to work a lot of hours. A lot of times my brother and I were alone after school for a certain amount of time. So I understand why parents are so disconnected from their community, but it does sadden me that they don't actually take full advantage of the resources that Chelsea has to offer. And sometimes I talk to them and I tell them, do you know about this? Do you know about that? And they have no idea about what's happening. So that makes me sad. I also find that once the kids get to a certain age, especially the teenagers, I have teenagers, they worry, like they want to do things like exercise, they do wrestling, they do this, or participate in extracurricular activities, and they want to do something outside of school to support it. And I found that it's very challenging in Chelsea because we don't have any like free gyms or like, for example, like a YMCA. So some of my children have to go to East Boston to be able to, to exercise, which is something that is very healthy. It's very good physically and also for your mental health. I see a lot of advantages there, so I think that it would be very wonderful if Chelsea, now that we see there's a lot of money coming into the city because there's a lot of investors that are interested, I think it would be nice if in return, those of us who have been here in the community, and mostly speaking for the immigrant community, because that's basically what Chelsea's made of, I think it would be nice if they could repay us by helping us, by giving us something nice, like a nice gym where children can go to after school, or maybe like a roller skate, like indoor roller skating rink or something like that. Kind of like when I grew up, I remember I used to go to that place in Somerville, the Good Times, I think it was called. So, that's like a place where children can go and hang out, but they're going to be in a safe space. So instead of going to hang out at somebody's house where you don't know what's happening in that house, they could go somewhere that is public, that's indoors, that is supervised, that they're doing healthy things. So that's something that I would like to see in Chelsea. Thank you.
So Danny, can you talk about what issues in the Chelsea community are most important to you and your peers? And do you feel that you have a voice in that?
Well, there's what I noticed from living here in Chelsea is that there are a lot of issues going on here in Chelsea. For example, affordable housing, the rents going up high, the roads I guess you can say halfway fixed, not even finished yet. I guess the bridges as well, the summer tunnel going to Boston is also cause a lot of traffic here in Chelsea. But I'd say mostly would be the education, because not all schools have programs for students to actually go and actually experience what college is like. For example, like the high school, they actually have like a program called TRIO or some like other resources where you can actually go take punk control classes and like, you know, have them, like, you know, have students do like a dual enrollment and try out college classes for like a semester. And I feel like it should be available for like all students here in Chelsea. And, or like, you know, having like a training school, like for example, like Northeast. Because originally from what I heard was that they were going to make the high school a training school, but it never happened. So like, you know, because as you can see, like most of the kids here apply to Northeast to, you know, like experience what an actual job looks like. So for example, there's like, you know, cooking food, there's carpentry, like hairstylists, and like they come out with a job there. But in here is where like, you know, you go like to a normal high school, learn about like certain things, you know, like certain classes you may take, and like have to like find a way to look for a job. Like, for example, I am taking like 2 bunk control processes, and you know, I'm like also working, and it took me like a lot of effort to actually, you know, look for a job. But like I thank my mom for, you know, helping me out and like introduced me to La Cooperativa, who also, you know, also made me, you know, like have it to like know what people are struggling in Chelsea. And I guess you can say at the moment I don't really have like a voice and to be heard of, but like I feel like near in the future I will have like a big voice, you know, to say all these problems that are going on.
So Roy, there are challenges to running a local business. There are challenges to being a local politician. And to call a pandemic a challenge is a gross understatement, but you hit the trifecta. Can you talk about the difficulties of being both a business owner and a city councilor during the pandemic? And how did those multiple hats you wore help you find solutions in that moment of crisis?
Take your time.
Yeah.
I didn't get a softball question, that's for sure. First of all, I just want to address that what is known here in Chelsea, you know, and not a lot of people understand that part outside of Chelsea, but like many communities, the city councils that we have, we all have other jobs. And because pay is not really a substantial pay that, it's not like Boston who is getting a raise right now of $125,000 or Cambridge, you know. Communities like Chelsea, outside of the big cities, you know, in general, all of their city councilors, selectmen, board, you know, townsmen, whatever you want to call them, different forms of government, are all people who have jobs every day. The difficulty about Chelsea, communities like Chelsea, is that Chelsea has a lot of issues. Communities like Chelsea, you know, isn't the same as, you know, a community like Reading. So the job as a city councilor over here in Chelsea is a lot more intensive and challenging with issues than, say, Reading. So that's number one. So we know that we have, you know, the responsibility, not the responsibility, but just the amount of issues that you have to solve, so to speak, a little bit more complex, and therefore need more time. Challenges is that, you know, we all just have one very, you know, time is limited, and taking time away from your one thing in your life, which is work and family, and saying, okay, I need to spend time as a city councilor, you're committed to the community, you said I'm putting my name on the ballot, and I promise to do a good job and so forth. Yeah, it takes time and effort. So when an issue like the pandemic comes up, way beyond what is the norm, all of a sudden, you know, it totally engulfs you, at least as a city council president. I was. The one thing that the pandemic also did while I was taking up all my time, basically, yeah, I had to shut down the business. So, kind of had the opportunity when we said. But, again, that job wasn't paying me. You know, city council was still what it was, so I still had to make ends meet, so, you know, that's why I had the other hat on, the real estate hat on. And I'm thankful that that allowed me to still be able to do my role, my now larger role as a city council president in the middle of a pandemic. And I think everyone's familiar here. I know Darlene, photographed what we did. Myself and partnering up with Gladys Dager and Collaborative and creating food pantry, literally, out of pure necessity without a plan inside. Gladys had the volunteers and I had the know-how. And it was a great collaboration. I had the resources. I look at my dad, 45 years of being a wholesale bakery and me driving his delivery routes and all that. I had all the contacts of food suppliers, grocery stores, produce market, you name it. So when the time came to go scavenging, I had the Rolodex in my head, and they were more than happy to, give us what we were looking for. And Gladys is pretty good at asking for it too. That was the challenge because you're not expected to be a full-time city councilor and still balance everything else.
I can start. When Dar and I interviewed you, you said, and I quote, "I've been my worst here and I've been my best here. I've seen my worst here and I've seen my best here. Chelsea is like a family member that you can't get rid of." Can you talk about how you see this community in your home?
So I've been here since I was 8 years old. I wasn't born here, but I call this place home. This is definitely home to me. People ask me where I'm from. I don't say Vietnam, I say Chelsea. And for some reason, no matter where I go in the world, everybody knows about Chelsea. What? I didn't know about Chelsea. Oh, you guys were 10th most dangerous cities in the world for 10 years. That's the first thing you say, okay. But they'll bring up the Chelsea fire, they'll bring up Chelsea, back in the days how the police department started in the 1800s. They'll bring up like different things that they know about Chelsea, and so as I was growing, I didn't grow too much, but as I was I guess. Maturing, thank you. I think that's where I'm at, even going through college, I took on psychology. Initially started as a double major in criminal justice, and then Salem State College became a university, and the points for graduation changed a little bit, so it didn't really coordinate with my financial aid to stay to double major, so I ended up just keeping the CJ criminal justice as a minor. And I remember working for loss prevention in Best Buy, and the Cambridge, we would call Cambridge police when we had people would come in and steal iPads and stuff like that, or whatever, they stole CDs. I would chase after them and stuff. I was like, all right, let's just call the police. It's not something I should be doing. And then I had a Cambridge cop tell me, hey, you should be a police officer. And I said, me? Yeah, I guess. And I thought about it. I wasn't of age yet. I was 19 at the time. And then I opted to apply for TSA. And I got into TSA, worked there a couple years, and then I turned 21. And the same Cambridge cop, take the test, just see how you do. And I said, okay, I'll take the test. So I took the test. There were thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Nowadays, if you go, there might be 10 people in line. The shop's just not as desirable anymore. So I got my scores back. I was got a 99, so I scored number 2. And thank you. And then went to the academy, and I felt nice because since I was 8 years old, I've only moved down to Chelsea as of 2 years ago. So I've been here 35 now, so quick man, 25 plus years, you know? So Chelsea's my entire life. My role in this community, getting on with the police department, being able to live and serve the folks that I grew up with, you know, is honestly a pleasure because you go out there and people already know who you are. They've seen you through Chelsea schools, you know, they remember you as a little kid from the supermarket or, you know, the corner store, you know, where it used to be little beaches, you know, and they remember that, and they remember you as a decent human being. And this job in itself is very delicate, right? Because you're dealing with human beings, and it takes a certain amount, like a certain person, to do this job. And, you know, this new world of policing where it involves community. So I would say my role in the city of Chelsea as a police officer would be like a guardian. I care for the city deeply. I care for the citizens I serve deeply. Because I'm aware that people aren't calling you over for a barbecue, right? They're like, hey, send that officer over, I'm having burgers, right? I mean, they're sending, you know, we're getting sent to calls where people are at their most vulnerable, the worst days of their lives, right? And you're there, you're showing up to try to solve it for them. You're the last phone call they made before they made the worst decisions of their lives. So, you know, we try to go in and understand that we're dealing with the essence of a human life, of a human being. We're dealing with, you know, good people, you know, people who make bad decisions. And at that point, you know, there's the role of the law enforcer, but then there's also the role of the community caretaker, the guardian who has to look out for the people who are going through crisis. And I saw that, like, widespread during the pandemic. It was amazing. With the food banks coming in, National Guard coming in, especially so many vendors donating. You know, we were there at details, mostly just doing traffic, but myself including, and other officers would help pack bags because, you know, majority of the officers truly did grow up here. So, you know, nobody can mess with Chelsea except us, I guess, right? But yeah, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm retiring here. So, thank you.
Any questions from any of you or comments? Yes.
Since Darlene invited me, I'll ask her a question. In all of your anthropological research that you've been doing, what's the most remarkable thing that you found about this place?
Oh, the remarkable thing about Chelsea? Wow. You know, like I said earlier, I mean, it's this sense of community. And I didn't say this before. It's funny, tonight I want you guys to know, I had a show, this show was in Cambridge. We had a huge turnout. It was great. And, it was a lot of photographers. This tonight means so much to me because it's my community. This is about the community. It's not about photography so much. I think really during the pandemic again, the way that this community came together was just remarkable. And the way that I was brought in, to wherever I went to photograph, there was just no question, just open arms and heart, come in, photograph. I see some of my friends from La Collaborativa that have kept me sane, but I think really just, like I said, I've enjoyed this community since I've been here. But really the most amazing thing was, once again, living through another resilient time for this city that I experienced. I wasn't here for the fires, I wasn't here for receivership and all that stuff. But to experience that showed me what this community is. It's amazing. And it's not just because we're small, it's because we have incredible groups, foundations, activists That's why Chelsea is so special. So, and this is a collaboration. What I do, it's a collaboration. I mean, bring all of us together, it's a collaboration. Let's talk about Chelsea. So. Hi.
I might have missed the beginning, so I apologize if the question is a bit redundant. But I'm curious, so you did an event in Cambridge, and you got a sense also for Cambridge. I used to live in Cambridge, and there's not that same sort of community cohesion as well. Part of it, I imagine, has to do with the fact that more than 50% of the people go home every summer and stuff like that. But I guess my question to you is, Darlene, given all the beautiful qualities of Chelsea, and juxtaposing that with all the 60-minute special in the 90s that started with, it's not the worst city in America. My question to you is, how did you discover Chelsea?
Okay.
Like, how did you end up here, I guess, is my
Kind of a
question.
fun story. I lived in Somerville for 20 plus years, and it was 2003, and a good friend of mine, her mother was a realtor, and she loved real estate and all that stuff, and it was January of 2003, and she said, there's a shoe factory in Chelsea that's, and back then it was like, lofts, artists, it was supposed to be artist lofts where I live, there are very few artists, as you know. But it was 2003, and I went, like I said, it was January. Our building was, it was dirt, and there were no floors. It was all crazy. But I went in, and I just, I got a good sense for it. I'm like, this could be a live workspace, and it seemed to make sense. And I liked Chelsea. I'd love coming over that bridge, And so I put $500 deposit down, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing this. And because I'm self-employed, I just kept coming to Chelsea, and I hung out with all the contractors, and it was a great experience. So that's how I got here, and there's more stories which I will share with you back at the ranch there. But yeah, that's how I came here. But like I said, I had a lot of time to think about what I was doing. And I went into, the waterfront, Medford Street, which I love that area. And there were some beautiful brownstones, but they were like 3 or 4 stories high. They have a roof deck, and I'm like, oh, that's great. But I'm a photographer, and I was shooting a lot of weddings at the time. And I'm like, I am not going to want to go and slug my, equipment up and down those stairs. And this place seemed to make sense, and it has been, I just love it. I love where I am, and so yeah, that's how it all started, coming here, so.
Hi there, my name is Kathy Gaudan, and this question could be for anyone on the panel, but I'd love to hear what are your hopes or dreams for Chelsea in the future?
Go down the line.
I guess I can answer that. I guess what I, hope for, in the future for Chelsea is that, there are more resources, for students, to learn about college, or have we were talking about this during work, have youth centers for, kids to hang out with, there are in some places, for example, in Revere, I don't know where else, but I feel like a youth center would be good in here, and I guess, better housing, having a good way for people to stay in their houses without being evicted, where at least in a way where everyone can stay happy in their homes, and at least have the roads fixed. Like I said, it's always never fixed. It's always have. But yeah, that's what I hope. And I hope Chelsea grows bigger. Because from what I know, it is a very small city, and I hope in the future it grows even more, and gets known a lot more better.
I'll jump in on this one. Being involved in politics for 25 years, worked at different levels of government, city, state, and being an advocate for Chelsea. worked at the State House, I've worked for a state agency. And I've also advocated for Chelsea. On all this. I've seen the difference of the response that some communities get versus what Chelsea gets. And a lot of that comes from its political power, political influence. Now, we just went through this pandemic, and I can think of some really good, powerful people that somehow, because of what we did, we got the attention, and now we have, some of the ear. I say, once again, I say her name, Gladys Vega. Because of what we did and the spotlight that we kept on getting, and I mean by that the media, we therefore all of a sudden was able to have someone who has, Charlie Baker on a call, being able to call him, text him. And that's great, because you say, okay, Chelsea needs something, that's what you're supposed to do. You hope to have this. And I can think of, having worked at the State House and working at the MassDOT, I remember whenever a certain politician called, if it was the Senate President, if it was the Speaker, or if it was Menino, things got moving. You wanted to get those things done. And my frustration was, there were so many things that Chelsea would face, so many social injustices, environmental injustices, that I wish that we could have had that sort of influence to just call, and say, hey, can you take care of this? And then boom, it gets done. I grew up, we had a pool closed for 10 years. Give me a break. Just recently we saw what happened with the asbestos. That would have never happened. I drove around the state. We finally got the snow fence, i.e. sound fence, that I saw all around on on 128 in the Met. So many examples. The airport, I see East Boston getting certain mitigation and Massport, drowning them with money and building parks. Meanwhile, we don't get anything. The list goes on and on and on. And as that list goes on and on and on, and as a resident of Chelsea, as an elected official of Chelsea, it pisses me off. Because I wish I could have that call. And so, if there was a hope and a wish for Chelsea, it's this. How those communities got there, the Newton, the Wellesley, it didn't take money. It really didn't take money. It took a vote. And the most frustrating thing that I have in this community is we just don't vote. It's a simple registration, get out, and it's a joke that we elect district city councils with like 80 votes. It really is. It was just, that's the frustrating part. Because I know we have, and some will say, you have this large population of immigrants who can't register. I see the numbers. I know what the numbers are. You give me 15,000 people who go out and vote in Chelsea, watch how fast things get done in this community. Because the politicians, when they want to get flashy and they want to do that photo op and they come out with the big fake check, or look where we are, they want to be at a ribbon cutting ceremony, or whatever they want to do, they go where the votes are, people. They do those PR things in communities where there's political power, and they also make sure they don't do anything stupid in those communities, because I've watched it, I've seen it. Being in those places at the State House, you got to be careful if you're going to do something in that community, because there's a lot of votes over there, and that senator and so forth. And every senator and state rep knows the more people that back him up, it's political power. So I would say my hope, my dream, my wish is that we really could have a community that really gets out and votes. That's it.
Anyone else? We have time for one more, if there is one more. If not,
Go for it.
I was curious what you think, because you're on the panel, what are some of the most important things that young people in Chelsea can do for the
What are some of the most important things?
that young people in the community can do? I'm curious, because you're here.
Wow.
Danny?
Danny. You didn't say it. You were looking right at me, you're like, you're looking at me, I'm like, okay. I would love to tell them that you can do, but go ahead.
You meant to say you were young.
I feel like, there could be many ways you can be involved, with the city. And, what I would like to see, there be more youth jobs available for the youth. It's always I've seen struggles for youth would be on waiting lists for jobs, or having to wait on from a call from a certain job they apply to, and just seeing that is kind of frustrates me, because we're trying to seek out a future, or have a beginning to where to start from to build up later. For example, if someone wants to start a small business, they would have to get certificate too, but to get those certificates they need money, so they need to find a certain way to where to begin.
What were you going to say?
I want to say that this summer was an incredible experience for me. I have always participated, again, thanks to my dad and the LACA Festival. We have always, I've spent a lot of my time raising money for the Summer Jobs Program, and I thought that youth employment is a great thing, but with this past summer, I got to be involved with a group of kids who, high school students, who were participating in a campaign. And let me tell you, that group, wow. Really impressed me. The adults were teaching them what to do. Some of them actually already knew what to do. One particular individual, Jimmy Marino, trained at the collaborative on how to lobby. Wow. And I looked at them and I was impressed, and I kept on telling them, you guys are doing things I didn't do when I was 18, so it was that incredible. And they really had this energy, and getting involved in something as simple as a campaign, that they were calling people, to hear someone call them and say, please come out to vote. Do you know, I'm not allowed to vote, I'm under 18, but you can vote, so can you vote for me? They had their stuff prepared. My guilt. And then the same group got together with other students and decided that there was a policy at in the school that they were not in agreement with, and it has to do with attendance and what happens when too many misses or too many missed days negatively impacts their grades. So I swear, we had nothing to do with it, we being the adults. We just watched them organize themselves about not being happy about certain things. March up to City Hall the night the school committee was meeting, and they organized themselves, and they gave it to them. They gave it to the school committee and said, hey, we're not happy with this. And I just sat to watch, because I said, this is incredible, I love this. And then a few years ago, again, a couple of years, it reminded me, and we told them, I said, a few years ago, there were a bunch of kids who weren't happy that they had to have graduation inside all the time, and they wanted to feel covered. They needed to get, money in order to cover the field, and otherwise it was going to happen. And the school department had said, no, there's no way we can get that money. There's no way that we can get that money. And they actually circumvented them and came right to the city council, and said, hey, we want this money. And the city council, yeah, we'll give it to you. So think about it, their authorities in front of them were saying, no, we won't be able to get that money. And they just said, nope, went around them. So I looked at that and I said, I would love to see that sort of, that happen more often, where, the younger ones are understanding that at that age, they can still make a difference. That at that age, they can get involved, make a change. And as an anecdote, let me just tell you something. One of the reasons that I got involved in politics is because I got pissed off when I was 18. I grew up in the waterfront. Polonia Park, as a kid, was a park that had swings, slides, a basketball court, and a water fountain. And it was a place where the kids in the neighborhood went to get their summer lunches. I remember waiting for that summer lunch. And when they redesigned the park and they turned it into a glorified dog park because they didn't want kids around making noise anymore, that pissed me off. And so later on I said, all right, I'm going to make a change. And that's what got me into politics. So, I'm looking at Danny and Jimmy, future politicians.
To add to the youth, is that a friend of mine started a Chelsea Youth Access Center. It's called Youth Elemental. And it's out of 289 Broadway, and they're open to 16 to 21 years old. And they're a low barrier service, meaning that they don't require any referral or ID to access their services. And the youth will have access to laundry, dryer, showers, food pantry groups, events, and support groups. They have peer mentors on site, a recovery navigator, and a family partner. So that started, I want to say, beginning of the summer. It's a great program. They're out at 289 Broadway. So if anybody's looking for resources for youth, point them towards Youth Elemental.
Thank you all. This has been really great. Thank you all, Ron.
And I just want to say one last thing. First, the youth, I just want to comment on the youth. I am blown away by the Chelsea youth. I mean, I followed them around door knocking. I photographed them in some of the classes at school and these conversations that they have, and they talk about the asbestos issue and how do you feel about that. There's so much autonomy. I wish I had that when I was a kid. But the Chelsea youth, man, I mean, they get out there, they protest, they, fight for what they believe in. I mean, I'm so impressed all the time with the youth. I just want to say that. But I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and I want to thank you guys, because this is what it's about. It's about Chelsea. This whole, I want to keep doing this. Have panels, photograph more people and, bring them up on stage. And, here they are, ask them questions. But thank you for coming out, and thank you guys, and the library, and, B, and, friends of the library, and everybody. So Sarah over there. But yeah, just thank you, Chelsea. I mean, yeah.